Theron Nightborne had lived for 317 years, and in all that time, he had never followed a child through a forest at 2 in the morning. But here he was, moving silently between ancient pines, tracking a small girl in a white nightgown who walked barefoot through the Oregon darkness like she was being pulled by invisible strings. The vampire king of the Pacific Territories was not a man who acted on curiosity. Curiosity was a human weakness. Yet for 2 weeks now, he had watched this child from the shadows of his estate. She would emerge from the staff quarters every night at exactly 2 a.m., her silver eyes glowing faintly in the darkness, and she would walk. Sometimes to his private rose garden. Sometimes to the library windows. Always stopping, always staring, always whispering words he could never quite hear. Silver eyes. No human child had silver eyes. Tonight, she had walked further than ever before. Past the manicured gardens. Past the security gates. Into the wild forest that bordered the Nightborne estate. Theron followed, his centuries-old instinct screaming that something was wrong. Or perhaps, something was about to be revealed. The girl reached a clearing bathed in moonlight and stopped. She was small, maybe 8 years old, with dark curls that cascaded down her back. Her bare feet sank into the moss. She raised her small hands toward the sky, and when she spoke, Theron's immortal heart nearly stopped. She was speaking Old Vampiric. A language that had been dead for 200 years. A language only the oldest of his kind even remembered. Father of shadows, father of blood, I am here. Her voice was young but carried an eerie weight, like an echo from another time. Why can't you hear me? I've been calling and calling. Please. I just want to know you. Father. Theron felt something crack inside his chest. The child was calling for her father in a tongue she should not know, with a longing that cut through the night air like a blade. He stepped forward from the tree line, his royal composure slipping. He needed answers. Who was this child? What was she? The girl turned, and for the first time, Theron saw her face fully in the moonlight. Her eyes were indeed silver, glowing with an otherworldly light, tears streaming down her small cheeks. When those eyes met his, recognition flashed across her features. Not the recognition of a stranger, but something deeper. Something that lived in the blood. You finally came, she whispered, her voice breaking with relief and exhaustion. Then her eyes rolled back, and she collapsed. Theron moved with supernatural speed, catching her before she hit the ground. The moment his skin touched hers, the world tilted. A sensation he had not felt in nearly a decade surged through him like lightning. A blood bond. Faint, like a whisper in a storm, but unmistakable. This child's blood recognized his. His blood recognized hers. Impossible. He stared down at her unconscious face, his mind racing through possibilities, through memories, through... Get away from my daughter! The scream shattered the moment like glass. Theron's head snapped up. Someone was crashing through the forest, branches breaking, desperate footsteps pounding against earth. A woman. Running toward them with the fury of a mother whose child was in danger. Theron stood, still holding the girl, ready to dismiss another panicked servant. But when the woman burst into the moonlit clearing, his entire world stopped. Time itself seemed to freeze. 3 centuries of existence, and nothing had prepared him for this moment. It was Rowan. Rowan Ashford. The human woman he had loved 9 years ago. The woman he had exiled to save her from his world. The woman whose face haunted every sleepless dawn. The only person in 300 years who had made him feel human. She was here. She had been here. On his estate. And this child, this impossible girl with silver eyes and his blood running through her veins, was in his arms. Rowan stood frozen, her chest heaving, her dark hair wild around her face, her eyes wide with terror and something else. Guilt. Grief. Recognition. Rowan? His voice came out broken, barely a whisper. A question. An accusation. A prayer. Her eyes dropped to the child in his arms. To the silver eyes that matched his own. to the truth she had been hiding. Have you ever discovered something that shattered every single thing you believed about your life? Drop a comment if you've ever had a moment where the past came back and destroyed you. The little girl stirred in his arms, and Theron looked down at her peaceful face, then back at the woman he had never stopped loving. And in the silence of that moonlit clearing, the Vampire King understood. The timeline. The eyes. The blood bond. The impossible truth that had been living on his estate for months, hidden in plain sight. This child was his daughter. And Rowan had kept her from him for 8 years. Rowan lunged forward, her hands reaching desperately for the child. Don't touch her. Give her to me right now. But Theron didn't move. He stood there, this ancient predator holding a small girl, his silver eyes locked on Rowan's face like he was seeing a ghost. His mind was doing the math. The terrible, inevitable math. 9 years since he had exiled her. An 8-year-old child. Silver eyes. A blood bond he could feel singing in his veins. How long have you been here? His voice was deadly quiet. The kind of quiet that came before storms. Before violence. Rowan's face was pale, her whole body shaking. That's none of your concern. We're leaving. Tonight. Just give her back to me and forget you ever saw us. Forget? The word came out like a whip crack. How old is she, Rowan? Silence. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath. How old is she? 8. The word was barely a whisper. She's 8 years old. Theron's face transformed. Centuries of control, of royal composure, of carefully maintained power, all of it shattered. You were pregnant. When I sent you away. You were carrying my child. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. A wound. A truth that was tearing him apart from the inside out. I tried to tell you. Rowan's voice broke, tears streaming down her face now. That night, when your guards came for me, I tried to tell you I was pregnant. But you wouldn't even look at me. You just said you deserve a human life and turned your back. They dragged me out before dawn. I screamed for you. I begged them to let me see you one more time. You never came. So you kept my daughter from me for 8 years? His roar shook the trees. The girl in his arms stirred but didn't wake. You let me believe I had nothing. You let me think you had moved on, lived a human life, forgotten me. And all this time, I had a child? Rowan's grief turned to fury. You threw me away like garbage. You told me to forget you. You chose your precious throne and your vampire laws over us. What was I supposed to do? Come crawling back with a baby and beg the great Theron Nightborne to acknowledge his half-human bastard? They would have killed her. Or worse, turned her into some political pawn. She is my blood. And she is my daughter. I raised her. I protected her. I kept her safe from your world. The clearing vibrated with their rage and anguish. Two people who had loved each other desperately, torn apart by impossible circumstances, now facing the consequence of every choice, every sacrifice, every moment of pain. The little girl's eyes fluttered open. She looked confused, disoriented, her glowing silver eyes dimming to a soft shimmer. Mama? Where are we? Why are you crying? Her gaze shifted to Theron, and something like wonder crossed her small face. You're the man from my dreams. The one in the rose garden. The one who's always so sad. Theron's anger dissolved like smoke. He knelt down, still holding her gently, his ancient heart breaking and rebuilding simultaneously. What's your name, little one? Nova. Nova Ashford. She studied his face with unnerving intensity, the way only children can, seeing straight through to the soul. Why do you look like me? Why do you have my eyes? Before Rowan could intervene, before she could pull her daughter away and run like every instinct was screaming at her to do, Nova reached out with one small hand and touched Theron's face. The vision hit them both like a tidal wave. A blood memory. Passed through touch. Through connection. Through the bond that had always been there, waiting. Nova saw her parents in a rose garden, young and in love, laughing under moonlight. She saw her mother's belly, small and secret. She saw men in dark clothes dragging her mother away. She saw her father on his knees in an empty garden, howling with grief. Theron saw Rowan pregnant and terrified, alone in a Seattle hospital with no one to hold her hand. He saw her giving birth, screaming, crying, calling his name. He saw her holding a tiny baby with silver eyes, tears of joy and sorrow mixing together. He saw years of struggle, of hiding, of a mother's desperate love protecting a child who glowed in the darkness. Both of them gasped and broke apart, shaking. Nova looked between them, her young face suddenly understanding everything. "You're my father. You're the one I've been calling to every night." Theron's silver eyes filled with something he hadn't felt in centuries. Tears. Actual tears. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, I am." But Rowan's face had transformed from anger to absolute horror. She was staring past them, past the tender moment, past the reunion. Her body went rigid. Theron turned. Standing at the edge of the clearing were three figures in dark cloaks, their faces hidden, their presence radiating authority and danger. Blood Council enforcers. The vampire lawkeepers who answered to no king. The lead enforcer stepped forward, pulling back his hood. Cassian Vale. A vampire Theron knew well. A political rival. A pure-blood extremist. Theron Nightborne, Cassian's voice was cold, formal, final. "You are in the presence of an illegal hybrid. By ancient law, by the decree you yourself helped write, she must be destroyed. Immediately. What would you do if someone told you your child had to die because of what she was, not who she was? Think about that." Rowan grabbed Nova and pulled her close, her body a shield, her eyes wild with the terror of a mother facing the unthinkable. Theron rose to his full height, positioning himself between his family and the enforcers, his face a mask of lethal promise. And in that moment, the Vampire King understood that everything he had built, everything he had ruled, every law he had enforced, was about to be tested. Because these men wanted to kill his daughter. And he would burn the entire vampire world to ash before he let that happen. Theron moved with supernatural speed, placing himself between the enforcers and Nova. His voice dropped to a tone that made the temperature in the clearing plummet. "Stand down. This is MY territory. You have no authority here without my permission." Cassian smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Only calculation. "This is Blood Council law, my king. Laws that supersede territorial authority. Hybrids are abominations. Threats to vampire security. The child dies tonight." Rowan pulled Nova behind her, and even though she was just a human woman facing three supernatural predators, she stood tall. Her hands were empty, but her eyes promised she would fight with teeth and nails and her last breath if they came one step closer. "You forget yourself, Cassian." Theron's power radiated outward, making the air shimmer. "I am the king of the Pacific Territories. I invoke sanctuary law. The child is under my protection." For a moment, Cassian's confidence flickered. Sanctuary law was ancient, absolute. But then his smile widened, and Theron's immortal heart sank because he recognized that expression. Triumph. The look of someone holding a winning card. "We anticipated you might say that." Cassian pulled a scroll from his cloak, sealed with 7 house emblems. The official seal of the full Blood Council. Sanctuary law was amended 3 years ago. It no longer applies to illegal hybrid offspring. The change was unanimous. He held it up so Theron could see the signatures at the bottom. And there, in elegant script, was Theron's own name. "You helped write this law yourself, my king. You signed it. You voted for it. 3 years ago, to prevent hybrid uprisings. Do you remember? You gave a speech about protecting the purity of vampire bloodlines. Theron felt the words like a stake through the chest. He did remember. A theoretical law. A preventative measure. He had never imagined, never dreamed, that he would have a hybrid child. That the law he created would be used to murder his own daughter. "Mama, what do they mean destroyed?" Nova's small voice cut through the tension. "Why are they looking at me like that?" Rowan's face crumpled. "Baby, close your eyes. Don't look at them. Are they going to hurt me?" "No," Theron said, his voice absolute. "No one is going to touch you." But his mind was racing. King versus father. Law versus love. If he defied the council openly, he risked civil war among the vampire houses. Blood feuds that could last centuries. Thousands dead. But this was his daughter. His child. A little girl who had been calling to him in the darkness, desperate for a father she had never known. "Then I challenge the law," Theron said. "I invoke the right of blood trial." The clearing went silent. The right of blood trial was ancient, rarely invoked, and incredibly dangerous. It meant Theron would face the council in formal combat, his claim against their law. If he won, the law could be overturned. If he lost, he would be executed. Cassian's eyes glittered. "You would risk your throne for a bastard hybrid? For a creature that should never have been born?" Theron's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "She is my daughter. I will burn every council house to ash. I will tear apart every vampire who stands between me and her. I will paint the mountains red before I let you touch one hair on her head." "How noble," Cassian said, his facade cracking. The great Theron Nightborne, finally showing weakness. "Do you know how long we've waited for this?" "We?" Cassian's smile turned vicious. "You think this is just about the law? You've been too soft, Theron. Too willing to negotiate with humans. Too interested in peace. There are those of us who remember what it means to be a true vampire. Pure. Powerful. Uncompromised by human sentiment. The truth crystallized. This was a setup. A political assassination disguised as law enforcement. They wanted me to find her," Theron said slowly. "You've been watching. Waiting for leverage. We've been tracking hybrid rumors for months. When we traced the mother here, to your estate, we knew it was perfect. Protect the hybrid, lose your crown. Enforce the law, destroy your own child. Either way, you lose. Either way, we win." Rowan stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tears on her face. "There's a third option. We leave. Tonight. You never saw us. We'll disappear. We've survived without you for 8 years. We'll do it again." "No." Theron's voice was anguished. "You have a responsibility to your people. You have a throne, a territory. We're just 2 lives. Don't throw away everything for us." Nova pulled away from her mother, running to Theron, wrapping her small arms around his legs. "I don't want to go. I just found him. Please, Mama, I've been so alone. He's my dad." Theron lifted her, holding her against his chest, and something in him that had been frozen for 9 years finally thawed. "I'm not losing you again. Either of you." But before anyone could move, Nova's body went rigid. Her eyes rolled back, her skin started to glow with an eerie silver light, and she began to convulse violently. Rowan screamed. "No! Not now! It's too early!" Theron nearly dropped her in shock. "What's happening to her? She's reaching maturity!" Rowan grabbed Nova's hand, terror making her voice shake. "Her vampire side is awakening. If we don't get her to a safe place in the next hour, the transformation will kill her. She's only 8, she's not strong enough yet, her body can't handle it." Nova's small body was burning up, her breathing shallow, her heartbeat erratic. Human and vampire fighting inside her, tearing her apart. Cassian watched with cold satisfaction. Well, it seems the problem will solve itself. How convenient. Have you ever been forced to choose between everything you've built and everyone you love? Leave a comment. Theron looked down at his dying daughter, then at Rowan's devastated face, then at the enforcers who were content to watch a child die. And in that moment, every choice he'd ever made, every crown he'd worn, every law he'd enforced, became utterly meaningless. The only thing that mattered was saving her. Theron scooped Nova into his arms, her small body convulsing against his chest. Where do I take her? Tell me now. Rowan was already running toward the forest path, her voice desperate. There's a rogue vampire doctor in Portland. Dr. Sienna Cross. She specializes in hybrids. It's a 4-hour drive. I can get us there in one. Theron's supernatural speed could cover distances that would take humans hours. But he'd need his car. And he'd need these enforcers out of his way. Cassian moved to block the path, his 2 companions flanking him. You're not going anywhere, Theron. That hybrid dies here, tonight. If not from the transformation, then by our hands. Theron's eyes went completely black. It was a transformation Rowan had only seen once before, 9 years ago, when a drunk human had tried to attack her in the estate gardens. Pure predator. Pure death. Move, Theron said softly. Or die. Choose quickly. Cassian drew a silver blade. The council wants you dethroned. I'm happy to make you a martyr. What happened next was violence in its purest form. Theron handed Nova to Rowan, then moved. The first enforcer didn't even see the blow that shattered his spine. The second managed to draw a weapon before Theron tore it from his hands and threw him into a tree with enough force to crack the trunk. Cassian was older, stronger, trained in combat. He met Theron's assault with centuries of skill. They collided in a blur of supernatural speed, silver blades flashing, blood spraying across the moonlit clearing. Run! Theron roared at Rowan between strikes. The garage! East side of the estate. Black SUV. Rowan didn't hesitate. She ran, Nova dying in her arms, branches tearing at her clothes and skin. Behind her, she heard the sounds of the fight. Inhuman snarls. Bodies hitting earth. The wet sound of violence. She burst from the forest onto the manicured estate grounds, her human lungs burning. The garage was 200 yards away. She could see it. Then one of the enforcers appeared in front of her, the one Theron had thrown into the tree. His face was twisted with rage and pain. Give me the abomination. Rowan skidded to a stop, clutching Nova tighter. The little girl was barely conscious, her skin burning with fever, her eyes glowing and fading like a dying light. Please, Rowan begged. She's just a child. She hasn't hurt anyone. She exists. That's enough. He advanced slowly, savoring her fear. Rowan backed toward the garage, her mind racing. She was human. Weak. Breakable. But she was also a mother, and there was no force in heaven or hell stronger than that. She reached the garage and grabbed the first thing her hand found. A silver tire iron, left carelessly on a workbench. Silver was poison to vampires, burned them like acid. The enforcer laughed. You think you can fight me with that? I think I'll die trying. Rowan raised the makeshift weapon. You want her? Go through me. He lunged. Rowan swung with everything she had. The silver tire iron connected with his arm and he screamed, his flesh sizzling. She swung again, catching him across the face. He was faster, stronger, already healing, but she was desperate and desperate mothers were dangerous. He backhanded her. Rowan flew backward, hitting the concrete floor hard enough to crack ribs. The tire iron clattered away. The enforcer stood over her, preparing to finish it. Then Theron was there. He appeared like a nightmare made flesh, covered in blood that wasn't his own, his eyes still black with rage. He grabbed the enforcer by the throat and simply crushed it. No ceremony. No speech. Just brutal, final violence. The body dropped. Theron turned to Rowan, his rage evaporating the moment he saw her on the ground, bleeding, still clutching their daughter. Rowan. He knelt beside her, his hands shaking as they touched her face. You're hurt. I'm fine. Take Nova. Please. She doesn't have much time. In the distance, they heard sirens. Someone had called human police. Cassian and the surviving enforcer had retreated, but they'd be back. This was far from over. Theron lifted both Rowan and Nova effortlessly, carrying them to the black SUV. I've got you. Both of you. I'm not letting go again. He placed them in the back seat, then slid behind the wheel. The engine roared to life, and they were moving, faster than any human vehicle should move, the Oregon wilderness blurring past the windows. In the back seat, Rowan held Nova, singing through her tears. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. Theron's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He recognized that song. Rowan used to hum it in the rose garden, 9 years ago, when they would lie together under the stars and talk about impossible futures. You sang that to our daughter, he said, his voice breaking. Every night, Rowan whispered. I wanted her to know she came from love. Even if her father never knew she existed. Even if we were alone. I wanted her to know she was made from something beautiful. I never stopped. The confession tore out of him. Loving you. Not for a single day in 9 years. I thought sending you away would save you. Instead, I destroyed us both. You didn't know about Nova. I should have fought for you. I should have burned the council to the ground before I let them take you from me. Nova stirred weakly. Dad? The word was barely a breath. It hurts. I know, sweetheart. We're almost there. Just hold on. They reached Portland in 47 minutes, Theron's supernatural reflexes navigating traffic at speeds that should have been impossible. He pulled up to what looked like an abandoned warehouse in the industrial district. Are you sure this is right? He asked. Rowan was already climbing out, Nova limp in her arms. Sienna doesn't advertise. She can't. What she does is illegal in both human and vampire law. They descended a hidden staircase to a basement clinic that smelled of antiseptic and old blood. A woman emerged from the shadows, tall and elegant, with the timeless beauty of a very old vampire. Dr. Sienna Cross took one look at Nova and her expression darkened. Damper transformation. How old? 8. Rowan's voice broke on the word. Sienna's eyes widened. Impossible. They don't transform until puberty. Unless... She pulled Nova from Rowan's arms, laying her on an examination table, checking her vitals with practiced efficiency. She's been calling to her vampire parent, hasn't she? The blood bond. The longing. It accelerated her awakening. Theron felt like he'd been stabbed. This is my fault. Her transformation is happening because she was trying to reach me. Can you save her? Rowan begged. Sienna was already hooking Nova up to monitors, inserting IVs. Maybe. She needs vampire blood. A massive amount. From her sire. You. She pointed at Theron. Take whatever you need. You don't understand. She'll need transfusions every day for a month. And you'll need to stay close. The bond has to strengthen or her body will reject the vampire side entirely and she'll die human. Then I'll stay. Whatever she needs. Sienna's face was grim. There's more. When she wakes, she'll be connected to you. Psychically. Emotionally. If you're in danger, she'll feel it. If you die. She paused. She dies. The bond will be that strong. You'll be tied together for the rest of her life. Rowan grabbed Theron's arm, her face white with terror. The Blood Council wants you dethroned. If they kill you, Nova dies too. The full horror of the situation crystallized. Theron was facing a tribunal for treason. His enemies wanted him dead. And now his death meant his daughter's death too. Sienna rushed Nova into a back room, barking orders about blood type and equipment. Theron and Rowan stood alone in the clinic, the weight of impossible choices crushing them. Theron's phone rang. He almost didn't answer. But when he saw the caller ID, Cassian Vale, he knew he had to. The council has convened, Cassian's voice was smug. Emergency tribunal. Tomorrow night at the mountain stronghold. You're charged with treason, harboring an illegal hybrid, and assaulting council enforcers. What's the penalty? Theron already knew. Execution by sunlight. And when you die, so does your little abomination. 2 birds, 1 dawn. Poetic, really. The line went dead. Rowan was pulling at his arm, desperation making her strong. We run. We take Nova and disappear. Canada. Mexico. Somewhere they can't find us. Theron cupped her face with both hands, looking into the eyes he'd loved for 9 years. I ran from this love once. I chose duty over you. I let fear make me a coward. Never again. They'll kill you. Maybe. But I'm going to that tribunal. And I'm going to burn their laws to the ground. How far would you go to protect the people you love? Would you risk everything? Let me know what you'd do. Rowan kissed him then, 9 years of grief and longing and desperate love in that single moment. And in a clinic beneath Portland, while their daughter fought for her life, 2 people who'd been torn apart by an impossible world found each other again. But the war was just beginning. 24 hours later, Nova lay in a hospital bed surrounded by machines, her small body connected to multiple 4 lines filled with Theron's blood. Her breathing was steady now, her fever broken, but she hadn't opened her eyes since the transformation began. Rowan sat beside her, holding her hand, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Theron stood at the window, dressed in formal council attire. Black suit. Silver cufflinks bearing his house seal. He looked every inch the Vampire King. But his eyes kept drifting back to the bed, to his daughter, to the family he just found and might lose forever in the next few hours. You have to go, Rowan said quietly. If you're late, they'll consider it an admission of guilt. I don't want to leave you unprotected. Sienna has security measures. We'll be safe for one night. But her voice wavered, betraying the lie. Theron crossed to her, kneeling beside the chair so they were eye level. I will come back to you. Both of you. You don't know that. I know that I've wasted 9 years. I know that I let fear and duty separate us once. I know that I have a daughter who's been calling to me in the darkness, desperate for a father. His voice roughened. I know that I would rather face execution than lose another day with you. Rowan touched his face, memorizing it. Come back to us. He kissed her, soft and desperate, then kissed Nova's forehead. I love you, he whispered to his sleeping daughter. I'm going to make a world where you don't have to hide. Then he was gone, moving through the Portland night toward a confrontation that would decide everything. The council chamber was carved into the Cascade Mountains, a cathedral of stone and shadow that had stood for 600 years. 13 council members sat in a semicircle, their faces impassive, their eyes gleaming with predatory intelligence. Behind them, representatives from the 7 major vampire houses watched from gallery seats. Theron entered alone, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. Cassian Vale stood at the prosecutor's podium, looking smug. Theron Nightborne, you stand accused of treason against the Blood Council, harboring an illegal hybrid in direct violation of treaty law, and assault against lawful enforcers performing their duty. How do you plead? I stand accused of loving my own child. Theron's voice carried to every corner of the chamber. If that's treason, then your laws are meaningless. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Cassian presented his evidence with theatrical precision. Video footage of Theron protecting Nova in the forest. Medical records proving her hybrid nature. Testimony from the enforcers about the fight. Photos of their injuries. The law is clear, Cassian declared. Hybrids are illegal. The king himself voted for this law 3 years ago. He cannot now claim exemption because of personal attachment. I didn't know about my daughter when I voted for that law, Theron said. I was told hybrids were dangerous weapons. Monsters who destroyed vampire societies. Show me evidence of that. Cassian faltered. The historical record is clear. Then show it. Present actual evidence, not myths and fear. An elderly vampire rose from the council seats. Margot Thorne, one of the oldest vampires in North America, over 600 years old. Her word carried enormous weight. The hybrid laws exist because Dampiers have historically posed significant threats to vampire civilization, she said carefully. The destruction of the European houses in the 1600s. The Asian conflicts of the 1400s. With respect, councilwoman, those conflicts were caused by vampire civil wars. Hybrids were scapegoats, not perpetrators. Theron pulled out documents he'd spent the day researching. I've reviewed the actual historical records. Every supposed hybrid threat was later proven to be political propaganda. The council members exchanged glances. He was winning the argument. Cassian's face tightened. Time for his final card. Perhaps the king is compromised. Perhaps the human has enthralled him. The chamber exploded in shocked whispers. Enthrallment was one of the darkest accusations in vampire law. The idea that a human could use blood magic to control a vampire's will. That's absurd, Theron said. Is it? Cassian presented a folder. Rowan Ashford. She worked at your estate 9 years ago. You became obsessed with her. Broke sacred laws to be with her. Then she mysteriously reappears with a child, and suddenly you're willing to destroy everything you've built. That's not love. That's compulsion. He spread photographs across the table. Images of Rowan that had been doctored to make her look sinister. Documents suggesting she'd studied occult practices. A completely fabricated history designed to paint her as a witch, a manipulator. The human seduced our king, bred a hybrid weapon, and now controls him through blood magic, Cassian declared. I move for her immediate execution and the child's destruction. For the safety of our king and our people. Several council members nodded. Seeds of doubt were planted. Bring the human here, Margot Thorne said. We will test her for blood magic. If she's innocent, she has nothing to fear. Theron's blood went cold. If Rowan came here, they'd find Nova. If he refused, it looked like he was protecting a witch. The human stays under my protection. Then you admit you're compromised, Cassian said triumphantly. I admit nothing except that I won't let you use her as a scapegoat for your political ambitions. Then we vote, Margot said. Should Theron Nightborne be stripped of his crown and executed for treason? Hands began to rise. Then the chamber doors exploded inward. Dr. Sienna strode in, carrying a stack of ancient texts, her face fierce. Counselors, I invoke the right of historical testimony. Cassian paled. This is a closed tribunal. And this is a miscarriage of justice based on fabricated history. Sienna slammed the texts onto the council table. I have evidence that's been suppressed for 400 years. Evidence that hybrids are not dangerous. Evidence that the 3 most peaceful vampire kingdoms in recorded history were advised by Damper counselors. Evidence that the dangerous hybrid narrative was propaganda created by pure-blood extremists. She opened the books, showing page after page of documentation. Treaties. Historical accounts. Records that had been hidden in private collections. And I have evidence, she continued, her voice ringing through the chamber, that Cassian Vale is part of a pure-blood supremacist faction. They've been systematically murdering Dampiers for centuries to maintain genetic purity. They want Theron dead not because of the law, but because a king who loves a human, who has a hybrid child, destroys their entire ideology. She pulled out more documents. Modern ones. Financial records. Communications. Evidence of a conspiracy that went far deeper than one tribunal. The council erupted. Accusations flew. Alliances cracked apart like ice. In the chaos, Cassian backed toward a side exit. Theron moved to stop him, but the vampire was already gone. Vanished into the mountain passages. Theron's phone buzzed. A video message. No caller ID. His hands shook as he opened it. The video showed the clinic in Portland. Cassian's face filled the screen, speaking directly to the camera. If I can't have you executed legally, I'll settle for revenge. I'm at the clinic now with 6 of my best enforcers. Surrender yourself by dawn, or the human and the hybrid burn. You have 3 hours to decide which you love more. Your life or theirs. The camera panned to show Rowan, standing protectively over Nova's hospital bed, a silver scalpel in her hand. She was trapped. Surrounded. And Theron was 3 hours away. Think about the people you love most. What would you sacrifice to save them? Drop a comment because this decision is impossible. Theron was already running, already moving, but he knew the truth. Cassian had won. No matter what choice he made, someone he loved was going to die. Theron didn't wait for permission. He didn't speak to the council. He simply moved, faster than he'd ever moved in 300 years, leaving the tribunal in chaos behind him. 3 hours to Portland. He could make it in 90 minutes if he pushed every limit. He called Rowan as he ran to his car. Get Nova out. Now. Her voice was steady, terrifyingly calm. She's still connected to the transfusion equipment. If I disconnect her, she could die. The transformation isn't complete. If you stay, you both die. Then you better drive fast. Because I'm not leaving our daughter. The line went dead. Theron's foot hit the accelerator and the world became a blur. Inside the clinic, Rowan stood between 6 armed enforcers and Nova's hospital bed. The silver scalpel in her hand was pathetic compared to their supernatural strength, but it was all she had. Cassian circled her slowly, like a predator playing with wounded prey. You really think you can stop us? You're human. Fragile. Mortal. I'm a mother. That makes me the most dangerous thing you'll ever face. He laughed. Theron won't make it in time. He'll arrive to find ashen bones. And that will destroy him more thoroughly than any execution. Why do you hate us so much? Because you represent everything wrong with our world. Vampires lowering themselves to love humans. Breeding abominations. Weakening our bloodlines with sentiment and mercy. His face twisted with disgust. We used to be apex predators. Gods. Now we negotiate treaties and pretend humans are equals. Your daughter is a symbol of our degradation. My daughter is an 8-year-old girl who just wants to know her father. Your daughter is a mistake that I'm going to erase. He gestured to his enforcers. They advanced. Rowan raised her scalpel, knowing it was hopeless, knowing she was about to die, but refusing to go quietly. You want her? Go through me first. The first enforcer reached for her. Then Nova's eyes snapped open. They were glowing brilliant silver, brighter than they'd ever been. The machines around her started to spark and malfunction. The 4 lines tore free. She sat up, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with power. Don't touch my mother. Her voice carried a weight that made even ancient vampires step back. This wasn't a child speaking. This was something else. Something new. A damper in full awakening. Cassian recovered quickly. Kill them both. Now. The enforcers lunged. Nova raised one small hand, and they stopped mid-motion. Frozen. held by an invisible force. Telekinesis. A rare damper ability that only manifested in the most powerful hybrids. I've been having dreams, Nova said, her young voice eerily calm. Dreams of my father alone in a garden, crying. Dreams of my mother singing to me before I was born. Dreams of a world that said I shouldn't exist. She looked at Cassian. But I do exist. And I'm done hiding. She released the enforcers, and they stumbled backward, terrified. Cassian drew a blade. Then die standing. He moved with centuries of speed, aiming to kill the child before she could react. Rowan screamed. Theron crashed through the clinic door at that exact moment, tackling Cassian mid-lunge. They went down in a tangle of violence, Theron's rage finally unleashed without restraint. You threatened my family. Theron's hands were around Cassian's throat. You tried to kill my daughter. The council will hunt you forever, Cassian choked out. Let them try. Stop. The shout came from the clinic entrance. Margot Thorne stood there with a dozen council guards, her ancient face unreadable. For a terrible moment, Theron thought they'd come to finish Cassian's work. Then she spoke. Cassian Vale, you are under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, falsifying evidence, and violating your oath to the Blood Council. Her guards moved forward, pulling Cassian away from Theron, binding him in silver chains. Margot approached Nova, studying her with intense curiosity. The first openly recognized damper in 4 centuries. Fascinating. She looked at Theron. The council has voted an emergency session. The hybrid laws are suspended pending full historical review. Sienna's evidence was compelling. And my throne? You remain king. Though I suspect you'll have opposition from the pureblood factions for years to come. She glanced at Rowan and Nova. Your family has made you a symbol. Of change. Of a future where vampires and humans don't have to be enemies. That threatens many who prefer the old ways. Let them be threatened. Margot almost smiled. Indeed. She gestured to her guards. Take Cassian to the mountain prison. He'll stand trial for his crimes. As they dragged him away, Cassian spat at Theron. You've destroyed us. Destroyed everything pure about our kind. No, Nova said quietly. You did that yourselves. By choosing hate over love. The guards left. The clinic fell silent except for the hum of medical equipment. Theron crossed to Nova, kneeling beside her bed. You saved yourself. You saved all of us. I had good teachers. She took his hand in Rowan's, joining them. A mother who taught me to be brave. And a father who taught me that love is worth fighting for. Rowan's tears fell freely now. Is it over? Are we safe? For now, Theron said. But the world is changing. And we're going to be at the center of that change. Together? He pulled her close, kissing her like he'd wanted to for 9 years. Together. Always. 1 month later, the Nightborne estate was transformed. Christmas lights decorated the Gothic architecture. The rose garden bloomed impossibly in December, touched by Nova's emerging powers. Inside the main hall, vampires and humans gathered together for the first time in centuries, celebrating the winter solstice with cautious hope. Nova ran through the halls, healthy and vibrant, learning to control her abilities under Sienna's guidance. Other Dampiers were emerging from hiding, drawn by the news that the laws had changed. That they didn't have to hide anymore. Theron found Rowan in the rose garden where they'd first fallen in love. She was wearing a dress the color of midnight, her hair woven with winter flowers. I followed our daughter into the night thinking I'd find a mystery, he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Instead, I found my whole heart. She leaned into him. She was calling to you for years. Maybe some bonds are too powerful to break. Even when we try. Mama! Dad! Nova ran up, her silver eyes bright with excitement. Can we open presents now? Please? Dad. The word still made Theron's centuries-old heart stutter with joy. Yes, sweetheart. Let's go. As they walked toward the estate together, a family finally whole, Theron thought about how close he'd come to losing everything. How fear and duty had almost cost him the only things that truly mattered. The vampire world was changing. There would be more battles ahead. More pure-blood extremists who wanted the old ways. More laws to overturn. More minds to change. But standing between his daughter and the woman he loved, Theron knew something the council had forgotten in their centuries of isolation. Real power wasn't about control. It was about connection. About choosing love even when the whole world said it was impossible. About protecting the truth that every being, human or vampire or something beautifully in between, deserved to exist without fear. They say you can't choose between duty and love. But maybe the strongest leaders are the ones brave enough to choose both. Maybe real courage isn't about following old laws blindly. It's about having the strength to write new ones when the old ones are unjust. And maybe the most dangerous thing in the world isn't a hybrid child. It's a world too afraid to let love rewrite the rules. If this story moved you, if you believe love is worth fighting for, drop a comment below and tell me what you would sacrifice for your family. Share this with someone who needs to hear that truth is more powerful than tradition, that family is worth any fight, that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is choose love over fear. And subscribe, because Nova's story, this family's journey in a changing world, this is just the beginning. There are more vampires emerging from the shadows. More vampire houses choosing sides. More battles between the old world and the new. And this family, born from impossible love, will be at the heart of it all.